Captain Aaron stood before the massive doors of the Zelf throne room. The doors were carved from dark crystal and glowed faintly under the pale light. He felt his heart pound with nervous energy. This was the first time a human envoy would meet Queen Nisara in her own court. Every step echoed across the polished floor as he moved forward. He wore his silver uniform, neat and pressed, the insignia of Earth's United Council shining on his chest. His hand hovered near his sidearm, but he knew better than to draw it here. When the doors creaked open, Aaron saw the Queen's throne. It was a high seat of black metal, shaped like a crescent moon. Behind it rose a wall of living vines that pulsed with soft light. Queen Nisara sat there alone. She wore a flowing gown of deep blue that shimmered like starlight. Her skin was pale lilac, smooth and flawless. Small elf-like ears peeked through her dark hair. Aaron felt as if he had stepped into a dream. He bowed low, his gaze fixed on the floor. He heard the whisper of his own breath. The court was silent. The noble Zelf guards stood at attention, their eyes cold and unblinking. Aaron lifted his head slowly and met Nisara's gaze. Her violet eyes were sharp and unreadable. He felt a shiver run down his spine. The Queen's presence was powerful. He knew that one wrong move could break any chance of peace. Queen Nisara's lips curved in a faint smile. She raised her hand, and Aaron froze. "Do you know," she said, her voice calm but firm, "that I only allow you to touch me, human?" The words echoed in the hall like a decree. Every eye in the room turned to him. Aaron swallowed. He felt heat rise in his cheeks. He had not expected such a personal demand. In that moment, he realized how different their worlds were. Aaron straightened and lifted his chin. He spoke in clear, steady tones. "Your Majesty, I understand your warning. I will follow your rule without question." He bowed again, lower this time. The Queen watched him, her eyes softening just a little. He could guess at her thoughts, but he would not presume. His mission was to ask for help against the warlord who threatened both their peoples. This warning meant more than a rule. It meant trust. As Aaron rose, he noticed the court stir. A messenger at the back hurried forward, clutching a holo tablet. The Queen held up her palm, and the guard stepped back. All waited for her next word. Aaron's pulse raced. He did not know what news the messenger carried. He only knew that his journey had just begun, under rules more strict than any treaty. In that quiet moment, he felt the weight of his people's hopes, and the fragile promise of trust that Nisara offered him with a single guarded invitation. Captain Aaron spent the next morning in the royal archives. He walked between tall shelves filled with holoscripts and data crystals. Each record held centuries of Zelf history and laws. Aaron knew he must learn their customs quickly. One small mistake could cost him his life, or worse, undo the fragile goodwill he hoped to build. A court scribe named Ilian approached him. Ilian's skin was pale lavender, like the Queen's, and his eyes held a curious spark. "Captain," he said softly, leaning close so the guards would not overhear, "you should know why Her Majesty guards her touch." Ilian slipped a thin crystal from his robes. "This holds the secret of the throne." Aaron accepted it with both hands and examined it under the soft light. Inside the crystal glowed an image of two Zelf-touching hands. A wave of pale energy coursed between them. The image faded and another scene appeared, a courtier reaching out without permission. The courtier's eyes widened in terror. Strange marks appeared on his skin, and he collapsed, screaming. Guards rushed in, but it was too late. He was mad. Aaron swallowed hard. The Queen's warning now made sense. Ilian glanced around. The Zelf share thoughts and feelings through a psychic bond, a bond formed by touch. He paused. Without permission, that bond becomes a curse. It scrambles the mind. Aaron nodded slowly. He thought of his own world, where touch was simple and safe. Here, a single hand on the Queen's shoulder could destroy her, and him. That afternoon, Aaron moved deeper into the palace. He studied portraits of past rulers, each wearing the same blue gown the queen favored. Their eyes seemed to watch him as he passed. Noble families gathered in small groups and whispered. He tilted his head, but could not hear their words. He sensed their doubt. Some wondered why the queen would trust a human at all. Others saw a chance to gain power through his mistakes. At dinner, Erin joined Ilian and 2 other diplomats in a side hall. Silver goblets clinked as they toasted to peace. Erin touched his own goblet and drank carefully. He forced himself to smile, though his mind buzzed with the day's revelations. He caught a noblewoman staring at his hand, as if she expected sparks of energy to fly from his skin. He lowered his hand slowly to his lap. When the meal ended, Ilian placed a hand on Erin's arm. Erin nearly recoiled, but remembered his promise. Ilian's touch was gentle and meaningful. He felt a warm current of understanding flow into him. No madness followed. "You have our trust," Ilian whispered. "But the court watches. Stay careful, Captain." Erin nodded, grateful for the small but powerful bond. As Erin left the hall, he looked back at the palace's glowing towers. The setting sun painted them gold. He knew the queen's decree carried great weight. He also knew that in learning these secrets, he edged closer to true alliance or complete disaster. Either way, his next move would shape the fate of 2 worlds. Scouts returned at dawn with urgent news. In the pale light of the council chamber, a holo map of the outer systems glowed green and red. Hundreds of red dots, enemy warships, marched toward Zelth space. Captain Erin's chest tightened at the sight. He had seen war before, but never on this scale. Queen Nisara stood at the head of the council table. Her blue gown swept the floor like a river of night. She tapped a slender finger on the map. "Warlord Korish moves faster than expected," she said, voice low but firm. "His fleet will breach our defenses in 3 cycles. A cycle was half an hour of Zelth time. 3 cycles meant only 90 minutes before the first ships arrived." Panic fluttered among the courtiers. Some whispered of surrender. Others urged a full war council. Erin held his breath. He knew that once the fleet arrived, Zelth worlds would burn. Then Ilian spoke. "Your Majesty, the enemy relies on a single supply network. If we strike their forward depot on Theta 9, we can cut their fuel and munitions. Their advance will stall." He gestured to a distant point on the map. Nizora regarded him for a long moment. Her violet eyes were unreadable. Finally, she nodded. "Very well. Captain Erin, will you lead this mission?" All eyes turned to him. Erin swallowed. He thought of his promise to protect the queen without touching her without permission. He thought of his own people on Earth, dreaming of peace. He felt the weight of 2 worlds on his shoulders. He stepped forward. "I will go," he said. His voice was clear. "I have led similar raids in my service. I know how to strike fast." Doubt flickered on some faces, but the queen's silent approval was enough. Within minutes, Erin's strike team gathered on the hangar bay's landing pad. 5 seasoned Zelth commandos led by Ilian and Erin himself stood before a sleek scout ship. Its engines thrummed with energy. The crew loaded black charges and data scramblers into crates. Erin checked his sidearm and holstered a small psychic dampener, one of Ilian's gifts, to protect him from accidental touch. As the hatch sealed, Erin took a steady breath. He tapped his comm. "Remember our rule," he said softly to Ilian. "No contact without permission." Ilian bowed. "Understood, Captain." The ship lifted off. Below, the palace towers fell away into shadows. Erin watched the horizon. He imagined Nizara waiting, bound by her own decree, trusting him to succeed. That thought sharpened his focus. Within an hour, they slipped through the edge of the warlord's blockade. Enemy sensors were weak here, unprepared for a small scout. Erin led them in a silent glide toward Theta 9's supply depot, a cluster of domed warehouses on a barren moon. As they descended, searchlights swept the landing zone. Hostile troopers scrambled. Erin motioned to his team. and they disembarked in a single fluid movement. Charged bolts cut through the defender shields. The commandos breached the main hangar. Eren laid the first explosive at the fuel silo, his pulse steady with purpose. Behind him, Ilian sent a psychic probe to scramble enemy communications. Screams of panic rose as detonations ripped through the depot. The supply domes collapsed in fire and smoke. Eren felt a shock of triumph, but no joy. Too much was at stake. As the final charge counted down, Eren sprinted back to the shuttle. He vaulted aboard just as the depot erupted in a pillar of flame. The ship accelerated into the void. Below, Theta 9 burned. Eren exhaled, sweat beading at his brow. He glanced at Ilian. "We did it," he said quietly. Ilian nodded, eyes bright with relief. "This will slow Koresh, but the battle has only begun." Eren pressed his hand to his chestplate. He thought of Nisara alone in her palace, waiting. He had kept his promise so far. Now he prayed his success would be enough to buy them more time, and that the Queen's trust would hold. Captain Eren's shuttle pierced the gray clouds above the abandoned relay station on Vessus Prime. The station was a skeleton of metal beams and broken consoles. Rusted pipes snaked across the floor like dead vines. Eren's team moved in tight formation, sensors scanning for enemy life signs. He felt the weight of his sidearm at his hip and the psychic dampener strapped to his forearm. Every step echoed in the empty base. Without warning, blaster fire cracked through the silence. Red bolts slashed past Eren's head. "Ambush," he shouted. He dived behind a metal crate as sparks danced across its surface. The team scattered, returning fire. Ilian crouched beside Eren, sending a quick psychic probe to locate the hidden shooters. The probes revealed several masked troopers perched behind elevated catwalks. Eren stood and fired a burst from his rifle. One trooper fell, but another aimed and fired back. The bolt hit the floor at Eren's feet, sending fragments of concrete flying. The shuttle's engines roared overhead. Enemy fighters had appeared to seal off any escape. Eren realized they could not retreat by air. Just then, the air shimmered with violet light. Queen Nisara appeared at the edge of the battle, standing on a broken control panel, as if stepping through a door. Her gown billowed like liquid night. Eren froze in awe. She held her hand aloft, eyes glowing. A dome of pale energy spread outward, blocking enemy fire. The troopers hesitated. Nisara raised her voice, calm yet commanding. "Fall back, Captain. I will clear the way." Her barrier surged brighter. Blaster bolts struck it and melted away like drops of water on hot metal. Eren's team slipped behind her shield, hearts pounding. He glanced at Ilian, who nodded in silent thanks. A sudden tremor shook the floor. The barrier flickered. Nisara's eyes widened. She steadied her stance, but the shimmering dome cracked like glass. Eren sensed a psychic pulse hit his dampener. He staggered, clutching his skull. Pain like electric fire raced through his mind. He collapsed to one knee, vision blurring. Nisara swept forward. With a swift motion, she placed a slender hand on Eren's shoulder. Her first touch of him. The barrier vanished, and a gentle wave of warmth washed over Eren. The pain receded. His breath returned in ragged gasps. The Queen's touch was careful and exact. He felt no madness, only calm. Behind them, the troopers fell back, shaken by the Queen's power and mercy. Eren rose, unsteady but alive. He looked at Nisara in wonder. Her gaze was soft, her lips pressed in a faint line of relief. She withdrew her hand as the last enemy dropped their weapons. Her barrier returned, stronger than before, pushing the remaining troopers into retreat. Eren straightened and saluted, though he doubted the gesture made sense in Zelth custom. "Thank you, Your Majesty," he managed. His voice trembled with gratitude. Nisara inclined her head briefly, then turned to the destroyed consoles. As Vessus Prime's sky darkened with storm clouds, Eren realized two truths. First, that the Queen would risk everything for a human. Second, that his promise to honor her rules had changed everything between them. In that dangerous moment, a true alliance was born. The royal cruiser drifted through starfields on its way home. Captain Aaron stood at the viewport, watching lines of light stretch into the void. He still felt the shock of the battle on Vessus Prime. Without Queen Nisara's timely rescue, he would have died. Inside the medical wing, soft lights glowed above a low bed. Nisara lay there, her blue gown torn and stained. A gentle hum of heal drones filled the room. Aaron watched as tiny mechanical arms applied Biogle to her wounds. He felt helpless. He could not touch her without permission. Ilian stood nearby, arms folded. "She is stable," he said quietly. "The gel works fast on Zelf physiology." Aaron nodded, eyes on the queen's pale lilac skin. Even wounded, she looked regal. A soft chime announced the door opening. A young guard entered with a tray of tea. He bowed low and set it down. The guard glanced at Aaron, fear in his eyes. Only hours ago, that guard had reached out to steady Nisara during the ambush. Nisara had stopped him at once, anger in her violet eyes. She had ordered the guard's hands bound, promising pain for disobedience. Aaron remembered the guard's shame. Now, Nisara waved a thin, graceful hand. "Release him," she whispered. Her voice was weak but clear. The guard's bonds unlocked. He gasped, then bowed again. Nisara forced a faint smile. "Thank you," she said softly. The guard's shoulders relaxed as he departed. Aaron exhaled. He moved to the tray and lifted a steaming cup. The scent was rich and floral, calming as the sea on earth. He carried the cup to the queen's side. She watched him, eyes curious. Aaron held the cup out carefully. Her trembling hand closed around it. He let go. The tea's warmth filled the room. They drank in silence. Aaron's mind replayed the past hours. The sudden ambush, Nisara's barrier, the crack in her power, her touch to save him. A bond had formed in that moment, stronger than any promise. When the heal drones finished, Nisara sat up slowly. She pressed a hand to her side, where a bandage lay. Aaron remained at her side, ready but waiting. After a moment, she spoke. "You honored my rule," she said. "You did not touch me to steady me. You waited." Aaron bowed his head. "Your Majesty, I do not break my word. You showed me trust. I showed mine in return." Nisara studied him. Then, with a small gesture, she reached out and laid her hand on his arm. The touch was light. Aaron felt a gentle warmth flow into him. No dizziness, no pain. Only the calm glow of shared trust. Outside the medical wing, the cruiser's engines whispered. Beyond the walls of this room lay a court that still questioned a human's place beside the queen. But in this quiet moment, the barriers between species felt thinner than ever. Forged by fire and healed by mercy, the human and the alien queen had built a bridge none could tear down. As Aaron looked into Nisara's violet eyes, he knew this bond would guide them through the trials ahead, and he would honor it, without fail. Deep below the throne room, behind a hidden door of obsidian steel, lay the secret council chamber. Captain Aaron crept along cold stone walls, heart pounding. Through the narrow slit he heard hushed voices. High Counselor Reth spoke in low tones. "The Queen's trust in one human weakens her rule." Lady Vela hissed back. "We must cut her off, blame the warlord's attack, and seize power." The air felt thick with treason. Aaron pressed his ear to the door. A cold fear gripped him. He realized these nobles planned to betray Nisara at the first sign of crisis. He knew he must act, and act fast. Silently, Aaron backed away from the chamber and slipped into a dark side corridor. With trembling fingers, he accessed his covered holo-tablet. Earlier that day, he had intercepted a coded transmission meant only for the conspirators. Now he decrypted it. The names of Reth and Vela glowed on the screen, alongside orders to rally the palace guard and accuse the queen when the warlord's fleet attacked. It was a precise plan to overthrow Nisara in the coming chaos. Erin's breath shook as he saved the file, under royal betrayal. Every second now counted. He moved swiftly through the palace's grand halls. Servants and guards bowed as he passed, and he returned their gestures with a courteous nod, careful not to touch any arm or shoulder. In Zelth custom, even friendly contact could trigger a psychic bond, and madness if misused. Torches along the walls cast shifting shadows, making him feel hunted. Courtiers whispered behind curtained windows. Some stared at his human uniform, others averted their eyes. Clutching the holo-tablet close, Erin focused on the Queen's private study far ahead. Could he warn her in time? Would she believe him? At last, he stood before Nisara's study door. He bowed low, bending only at the waist. Inside, the Queen sat at her desk, reviewing battle projections. When she met his gaze, her violet eyes held calm authority. Erin swallowed and whispered, "Your Majesty, I bear urgent evidence of a plot against you." Nisara inclined her head. Erin stepped to the edge of her desk, no closer, to hand her the holo-tablet. She activated it with a slender finger. Treasonous voices and names flickered in the holo-projection. Reth's and Vela's faces appeared. Nisara's expression hardened. "You did well, Captain," she said softly. "We must move quickly." Outside, storm clouds gathered above the palace spires as the first of the warlord's ships slipped through the blockade. Lightning flashed across the dark sky. But within these walls, a deeper threat loomed. Nisara rose, regal and resolute, her gown brushing the floor like liquid night. Erin remained at her side, eyes steady. "They will strike during the assault," she said, voice firm. "We will face both foes together." She glanced at him, then swept her hand to summon her loyal guard. In that silent gesture, free of touch but rich in meaning, Erin felt the bond between them strengthen. Two worlds now hung in balance, yet united. Human and Queen would stand against betrayal and war. Dawn broke over the palace spires as Queen Nisara prepared to face her court. The grand hall glowed with pale light. Rows of guards in silver armor stood at attention. Noble families watched from balconies above. Captain Erin waited near the entrance, heart steady but mind alert. Today would prove the strength of their bond. Nisara entered the hall, her gown flowing like water. She walked with measured steps to the raised dais. Behind her, the palace guard bowed low in silent respect. Erin followed, moving up the center aisle. He kept his gaze forward, careful not to reach out to the Queen without her leave. When they reached the dais, Nisara raised her voice. "Today," she said, "we face threats both from the warlord and from traitors within." Her words rang clear in the vast space. Courtiers exchanged uneasy glances. Some clutched their robes. Others straightened, bracing for her next command. Then the Queen turned to Erin. She lifted a slender hand, palm open. "Captain Erin," she declared, "step beside me." The hall fell silent. Erin bowed his head and climbed the few steps to stand at her side. Together, human and Queen shared the same platform, side by side, as equals in that moment. Nisara spoke again, eyes sweeping the crowd. "This human has earned our trust," she said. "I choose him as my ally. Betray him, and you betray the crown." Gasps rose from the balconies. Erin felt the weight of every gaze. He held himself straight, proud, and calm. For the final gesture, Nisara extended her arm toward Erin. The silver sleeve of her gown fell away, revealing pale lilac skin. She gave him permission. "Touch me now, Captain. Show our unity." Her voice was soft but sure. Erin hesitated only for a breath. Then he lifted his hand. His fingers met her arm in a gentle press. A soft glow of psychic warmth bloomed where they touched. Neither felt shock nor fear. Instead, a quiet power filled the hall like morning light. The guards bowed deeply. The courtiers gasped and whispered. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then a low murmur of approval rolled through the room. Noblewomen clutched each other's sleeves. Lords leaned forward, eyes bright. The tension in the air shifted. Where there had been doubt, now stood resolve. Nizara withdrew her arm and stepped down from the dais. Eren followed. As they walked back across the hall, the guards opened a path. Courtiers fell in line behind them, united under the Queen's choice. In that simple touch, they had sealed a pact stronger than any treaty. Outside the hall, banners snapped in the dawn breeze. Eren and Nizara paused at the palace doors. They shared a brief glance, one of respect, trust, and shared purpose. Ahead lay war and betrayal, but together they were ready. The Queen's gambit had won the court's loyalty, and two worlds now stood as one. Dawnlight fell through shattered windows as rebels and loyal guards clashed in the throne room. Outside, the distant roar of Warlord Korish's fleet echoed through the palace walls. Inside, coated in dust and broken marble, Captain Eren led the Queen's Guard against High Counselor Reth's traitor soldiers. Bolts of energy crackled, swords rang on armor, and shouts filled the air. Eren ordered his men to form a protective line in front of the dais where Queen Nizara stood. She raised her hand, summoning a pale barrier that arced around her like glass. The guards pressed forward, using shields and rifles to drive back the traitors. Eren darted from pillar to pillar, marking each enemy and guiding his team with clear, calm commands. In the midst of the fight, Eren spotted Lady Vela striking at the barrier's edge. She hurled a blade tipped with psychic poison. The blade pierced the light dome and slashed Nizara's arm. The Queen gasped, weakness flashing across her violet eyes. Her barrier wavered, and enemy soldiers surged closer. "Your Majesty," Eren shouted, sprinting through the chaos. He fired stunning bolts at the nearest rebels, sending them to the ground. As guards recovered, Eren reached the Queen's side. Blood stained her sleeve. She looked at him, pain and resolve in her gaze. Eren knelt and met her eyes. He knew his promise. No touch without permission. But he could not watch her fall. He whispered, "Forgive me," and laid his palm gently on her wound. A warm pulse spread from his hand across her arm. The psychic dampener arched to life, turning pain to calm. Her wound knit closed, the band of energy fading as skin sealed. Nizara's strength returned almost at once. She rose, barrier flaring brilliant once more. With a swift motion, she released a wave of psychic force that threw the rebel soldiers backward like ragdolls. Cries of fear echoed as they stumbled out of the throne room, tripping over ruined statues and broken tiles. The loyal guard surged forward, cuffing the stunned traitors. Reth and Vela, their plans undone, slumped to their knees before the dais. Nizara stood tall, her gown flowing despite the dust. She looked at Eren, gratitude and steel in her eyes. He bowed his head, using no more touch than necessary. Silence fell. Outside, the warlord's fleet retreated as Theta 9's supply depot remained crippled. Inside, the traitors lay bound, and the wounded were tended by heal drones. Guards cleared rubble while courtiers peered from balconies, awed by the Queen's power and the humans' loyalty. Eren helped Nizara to her feet. They shared a brief look, one of shared victory and deep trust. In that ruined hall, two worlds had fought side by side and proved unbreakable. Beyond the palace walls, Earth's envoy and the Zelth Queen stood ready to face whatever came next, together. The throne room lay quiet after the battle. Dust and broken stone covered the floor. Outside, the sky was clear for the first time in days. Word spread that Warlord Korish's fleet had turned back. His supply lines were gone, and his ships had no fuel to chase the Zelth home. The threat had passed. Queen Nizara stood on the dais, her gown still stained but her posture proud. She looked at her court, her people who once doubted her choice to trust a human. Now they knelt in respect, not fear. Many faces shone with relief. Some held tears. All saw the proof. Eren's loyalty had saved them. Captain Eren entered the silent hall. He moved slowly, still mindful of her rules. He knelt before Nizara, but did not bow too low. The light caught the small bandage on his own wrist, wounds from the battle. He had fought beside her guard and carried the fallen to safety. He bore his own scars that he did not show easily. Nisara spoke in a clear voice. Erin, you have given your blood and risked your life for my people. She paused. Now I offer you something in return. Erin lifted his head. The queen stepped down and placed a hand on his shoulder. It was the first time she reached out since the great touch on the battlefield. He felt a warm pulse, not of pain but of deep bond. No madness came. Only a calm light filled his mind. My decree ends, she said. No longer do I forbid my people to touch me if they have earned it. But you, Erin, you have shown honor beyond any rule. Will you remain here, at my side, not only as envoy but as friend? Her violet eyes were bright. Erin's heart thundered. He rose to his feet and took a steady breath. Your Majesty, he said, I came to ask for peace between our worlds. I will stay as long as you wish. I will serve you and the Zelth with all my strength. His words were simple, but filled with promise. Courtiers whispered in awe. Even the guards stood straighter. A murmur moved through the hall as Nisara motioned to her advisors. Let us rebuild together. Let our peoples learn from each other. Let us forge a new council, half human, half Zelth, to guide our alliances. The court erupted in applause. Erin allowed himself a small smile. That evening, in the quiet of the palace gardens, Erin and Nisara walked side by side. The moon cast silver light on fountains and vines. Erin carried a small pack with his few belongings. Nisara paused by a marble bench and sat. Erin bowed and sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. You sacrificed your safety to warn me of betrayal, she said softly. You risked yourself to heal my wounds. Erin nodded. I would do it again, he answered. No life is worth more than the promise we made. Nisara looked up at the stars. This victory cost many lives, she whispered. We must honor them by building a better future. Erin placed his hand gently on her back, a touch both respectful and caring. They sat in that soft silence, two leaders bound by sacrifice and trust, ready to guide two worlds toward peace. Months passed since the final battle. The palace at Lunaris, a neutral moon station, buzzed with life. Humans and Zelth walked side by side in the grand halls. Captain Erin and Queen Nisara stood together at the opening of the new Alliance Council chamber. The walls were lined with flags of both worlds, red Earth stars beside violet Zelth crescents. Erin felt a thrill in his chest. He had never imagined he would stand here as more than an envoy. Now he was a founding member of a council that would guide two species toward peace. Nisara placed a hand on his arm, a silent invitation to step forward. He bowed his head and took his seat at the polished table. Council members filed in, human scientists, Zelth diplomats, and mixed teams of cultural liaisons. A human scholar offered a small gift to a Zelth artist, and they smiled as they exchanged tokens of friendship. Erin remembered how different things had been in the throne room long ago, when a single touch was forbidden. Now a handshake between a human and a Zelth was a sign of respect. Nisara rose first to speak. Her voice carried through the chamber without need for amplification. Today, she said, we begin a new chapter. We learn from each other's strengths. We share our knowledge, art, and science. We build defenses together against any threat, and we grow our peoples in trust. She looked at Erin, and he felt honored. When the council session ended, Erin stepped into the open balcony overlooking the starfield. Nisara joined him, her gown rippling like liquid night. Below, the Alliance ships moved in quiet formation. Each ship flew both flags. He realized how far they had come together. Do you remember your first warning? Erin asked softly. That I could only touch you if you allowed it. Nisara turned to him, violet eyes warm. I was cautious then, she said, but you earned my trust. You proved that a human hand can heal as much as it can harm. Erin offered his hand. Nisara smiled and took it. No spark of fear, only a gentle glow of friendship. They stood in that simple embrace, united by years of hard work and sacrifice. Later, Aaron visited the mixed human Zelf school. Children laughed as they learned both languages. A young girl showed him a drawing of Earth rising above a purple planet. Aaron knelt beside her and praised her art. She beamed. In her eyes, he saw the future he had fought for. Back at the embassy gardens, Ilian and other Zelf officers tested new healing drones created by Earth engineers. The machines hummed softly, easing wounds with no psychic risk. Aaron watched them work, proud of what they had built together. As night fell on Lunaris, Aaron and Nizara shared a quiet moment beside a crystal fountain. Water caught the light of distant suns. Aaron spoke of his home on Earth, of blue skies and green forests. Nizara told him of her world's violet seas and floating gardens. They spoke of their hopes and fears without barriers. In that calm peace, two leaders, once bound by warning and protocol, found a true partnership. Their worlds now moved forward as one. And in the silent space between stars, humanity and the Zelf stepped into a promise of unity that would last for generations.